Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Do you ever feel like you're doing the journey alone? Have you ever felt like that you just need someone to talk to, someone who could bring some perspective into your world? Or maybe you're not the type of person who learns from watching video courses or reading books, and you just want to talk with someone specifically about your challenges and how to break through them. I want to introduce you to the High Performance Men's Coaching Program. It's an intensive coaching experience designed to unlock a man's full potential in his life, business, and relationships. Over this past year, I've brought together and trained some of the best coaches in the world to help men step up, stop playing small, and become the strongest versions of themselves. Learn more about High Performance Men's Coaching at kfmcoach.com. Again, that's kfmcoach.com. You are not alone, and we are here to cut through the crap, hold you accountable, and challenge you so that you can make your dreams become a reality. Go to kfmcoach.com to learn more and apply. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Jordan Harbinger, the co-founder of the Art of Charm and host of the Art of Charm podcast. Honestly, Art of Charm podcast, guys, one of the longest running podcasts that I know of producing personal growth content. I believe 2006. Is that right, Jordan?
Yep, 2006.
It was formerly the Pickup Podcast, something like that. But
yeah,
Jordan, you're actually, this is our third time doing an interview, and you were the third guy who's shown up for 3 rounds of the Knowledge for Men show. First guy was Mark Manson. Second guy was Michael Matthews at Muscle for Life. And here we are, Jordan Harbinger, for the third show here.
All right. Glad to make the cut.
All right. You made it. You made it. And so, Jordan, we start off every show with a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's helped you on your journey. So what do you got for us? And what does that mean to you?
Sure. I love the quote, fortune favors the prepared. And it's translated from, I think, Greek or Latin or something like that from back in the day. So there's other translations out there, such as fortune favors the bold. The bold doesn't really have a great connotation in modern English. It's more like the ballsy, arrogant guys with gall. And I don't really think that's what they mean. What they mean is fortune favors, what I'd like to think they mean, or the version that I like, is fortune favors the prepared, which means that it's kind of like the harder I work, the luckier I get. But I see a lot of folks that are entrepreneurs and things like that waiting to be discovered, or waiting for a relationship to fall in their lap, or waiting for certain sets of circumstances to come together, waiting on timing. And that's not necessarily how things are done. There's a time and a place to wait and be patient, but there's also time to make sure that you're ready to seize on opportunity. And I think that other quotes and other ideas, such as, I think, what is it? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity and things like that.
Yeah.
Those types of things are all in the same vein. And these are hugely important concepts, because I think for a lot of us, we spend a lot of time waiting for something or working on something thinking, all right, well, if we just sort of put in the time, it'll happen. But it's not necessarily true. I mean, you can really grind it out for years and years and years, and nothing can happen. It's just the reason we don't believe that here in the States, North America, or the West, whatever, is because it's an uncomfortable truth. The uncomfortable truth is you are going to see people that started a podcast or a business or whatever 10 years after you, and they're going to lap you. And it's because they're doing things better than you. And it's just a really uncomfortable thought. But if you're constantly working on the right things and identifying the things that you need to be working on, and really putting in the time and the energy, and also have the talent and the work ethic, then maybe you will be in the top tier. But not always. And I think it's just, I love that quote because it's really the only thing that we can control. And I think a lot of us are either focused on things we cannot control, or we're focused on lamenting the fact that we can't control those things.
Yeah. Very, very good kind of topic to bring up here. I was just listening to an interview that Michael Phelps did, and he lost a race back in 2012. Even though he did really well, he still lost a race, and it like haunted him. He's like, this is never going to happen again. I'm not going to lose that race. I'm so good at this sort of race. I should have won. And so what he did for the next 4 years till the next Olympics in 2016, he never missed one training day. And he says, like, that's unheard of in swimming. Swimming laps every day, every week, every month, during holidays. He said, I never missed one workout day. And he's like, in swimming, when you miss one workout day, it sets you back about 3 days. And so you're actually trying to recover and get back to where you were. And so he knew that if he never missed one day, like, that's how he would compete and win, is because he would never miss a day. And other people that he was going to race against in 2016, they would miss a day. That's how he won. And he's got the most. 2016 was a stellar Olympics for him, and he's the Olympian of Olympians.
Yeah, I mean, look at that race that he won. I want to say against France. Didn't he win by? It was like 100th of a second, where essentially it just came down to those two guys are of equal ability in that particular race. It just happened to. It could have even been like the hydrodynamics of one guy's finger not pushing hard enough. I mean, it's just an almost immeasurable difference. Only they can measure. It's 100th of a second or 1,000th of a second or something ridiculous like that. But look, he would have lost that race without the amount of training and dedication that he put in. That's, I think, the message there. It's not that he won because of it, because he won because of who knows what, but he definitely, if they're that close, he almost certainly would have lost if he was doing the same lax or relatively lax training schedule as the other folks. And it doesn't mean that more training is better, but it certainly means that the scoreboard illustrates that somebody who's got that much drive and that much dedication has the ability, in his case, to take home more medals than anyone else.
Yeah. You talk about working on the right things. Like, someone can come in 5 years later, 10 years after you, and just fly past you because he's doing the right things. So how do we identify those right things in our craft?
Well, that's the trick, isn't it? I mean, it's really tough for anybody to really identify these things. So that's why it's such a huge advantage when you absolutely are actually able to do that. And for me, I think it's a lot of people will focus on looking at the big picture of what they want. And I'll just give examples here because I want people to read between the lines, and I want people to be able to figure this out for themselves, because it requires introspection and it requires examination of your industry and things like that. But there's a lot of people who start things on the internet, podcasts or blogs or whatever. And the reason they're doing it is that they want to be famous a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So, doing something for the right reasons is a whole different topic that's, I think, less interesting, because everyone's talked about that before. Oh, do it for you. Don't do it for the whatever. Let's be real. People want that. Ego wants that. That's a whole different show that I'm not an expert on by any stretch. But they want to do these shows or these blogs or these books even to become famous and have a profile and be a thought leader, whatever the hell that means. And so they're looking at the component pieces of that, and they're thinking, okay, I need to have great marketing. I need to be around famous people all the time, or YouTube celebrities, depending on how loose your definition is of famous people, and things like that, and I want to have these people on my profile. I want to be in pictures with those people. That's great. You're really working on the skill of being in the right place at the right time. That's great. Working on relationships. That's great. But are these really the components of success in your industry? And I would argue that they might not be. I think they feel good short term. But if you look at a lot of the people who are doing this that want to be famous, that want to be recognized, they do get it to a certain extent. But when you look at the type of people that make up their fan base, or when you look at the time that certain people are interested in their content and then graduate to something else, you realize, oh, wait a second, you're actually focusing on the wrong pieces of what this is. You're focusing on essentially what that is marketing, right? Being around famous people, or they're having webinars where their celebrities show up, or having a Snapchat with the president on it or something like that for 5 seconds. That is all flash in the pan. At that point, or at least you can expect your customer to be somebody who's easily impressed and then moves on to the next shiny object. And that's not really what's going to keep people around for a long time. So if you're playing long game like I am, what you want is to work on the research that you put into each show. When I interview somebody, I read their book. If they have 2 books, I probably read both. I read all of the reviews that I can find of their work. I review and study and research the breakdowns of things that they have. I look at critical reviews of their work. I talk to their friends if I can find them. I will talk to them before the show, ideally. I will listen to other interviews that they've had so I don't ask the same questions, or that I can dig deeper on subjects that I think maybe that interviewer didn't dig deeply enough because maybe they didn't do the prep like I'm doing at that particular point. I work on those things. So I work on research as a skill. I work on interviewing as a skill. I work on formulating questions as a skill. I work on presentation as a skill. So when I look at other broadcasters, and I'm not gonna throw anybody particular under the bus, but when I look at let's say a wide swath of other broadcasters, I might go, "What are you guys working on right now?" And they say things like, "I'm working on my funnel to get people from Twitter to my website to subscribe to the show." Okay, cool, marketing. All right, what are you working on? I'm working on a YouTube channel to get people to view my interviews on YouTube and then eventually subscribe to the show. Okay, cool. Also marketing. Oh, I'm working on social media for engagement. Oh, I'm working on show art and show branding. Not that none of that stuff is important. It's just that it tends to be superficial. It's almost like the business cards. Remember when you first started your business, you're like, I'm going to get business cards.
Right,
and you spent 8 hours designing one, and then you gave 2 away, and you're like,
just
these
went
things
straight into the trash. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody freaking uses these. Thanks, Vistaprint, and there goes a weekend of my life that I'll never get back, and you just recycle them, hopefully. And I used to do the same stuff. I'm not trying to be all like, look at where I'm at. I'm telling you this because of personal experience. And so when I look at the things that I work on, I'm taking voiceover lessons from literally an acting coach, so that when I read things or talk about things or do commercials for sponsors on the Art of Charm podcast, they sound really good. People can stay engaged for longer. So the reason I'm able to have a show that's an hour or 45 minutes or whatever and keep people listening through the whole thing is because I've worked on certain vocal technique for a long time that's going to keep people interested for that long. And most people cannot do that. But it's really boring and tedious to work on vocal variation and dynamic speaking for months and months and months and be doing cartoony voices with a teacher on Skype on a Saturday morning instead of sleeping in or chilling, because I want to be able to have that skill. It's different to hire somebody, a broadcasting coach in Canada in my case, or some other radio guys that are older that don't understand podcasting, and have them listen to the show and just shred every minute of it so that we can break it down and build it back up again. It's just not sexy, but it's the right thing to do for the long game. And so I think a lot of people, when they focus on the component parts of what if they're even looking at it, you should focus on the component parts of what you're trying to get good at, but focus on the component parts that don't necessarily yield quick results, and look at the component parts that you think maybe are going to make a difference in 5 years, not necessarily the thing that's going to make a difference now. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people are thinking, but I have a blog and it doesn't even matter if I do a good one because nobody's reading it. So I got to get more people reading it and da-da-da. No, do a great blog for a really long time, and then the marketing becomes a lot easier. And I lamented for a long time that I was really bad at marketing and blah, blah, blah. And now I found that, look, now when we have to quote unquote sell the product, which is get people to go listen to the Art of Charm podcast, there's a lot of folks that go, oh yeah, I've heard of that because you had this person on there and I listened to the interview. And it's just a very slow brick by brick building, but you can't do it if you're not looking at the right pieces of work. And I know that a lot of people who are starting businesses or starting to write or something like that, yeah, they want to write a book, they want to put it out there, and they want to get Amazon bestseller status, and then they want to do this and this and this, and then they got to do this thing where they purchase essentially a number one New York Times bestseller or Wall Street Journal or whatever. And none of that is because they want to make impact on the greatest number of people. It's because they want a freaking blue check mark on Instagram.
Yeah, that's the reason. They'd rather focus on having a bestseller title versus writing a great book that's going to actually do what's on the title of that book.
Exactly. And again, I completely understand why. And I also understand the temptation to do so when you're first starting off, because it really does seem like you're wasting your time if you're just creating content and nobody's really consuming it. But I will tell you that only works short term. The people that are doing things for long game, they're successful for a lot longer. They don't have to switch up their business model after 5 or 10 years. They don't have to worry about rebranding. And it's so interesting to watch people that were killing it doing internet marketing or something like that 5 years ago, and I was so jealous that these guys were making millions of dollars selling some dating product or something. They're nowhere to be found now.
Yeah.
They're nowhere to be found. Occasionally you hear from them and they're still running the same old thing. Nobody's talking about them. They're advertising on porn sites, and they've basically just kind of thrown it on autopilot because they hate what they do, and it's just something that pays for their new toy that they bought to make them happy.
Yeah, you've been in the industry a while. This reminds me of that quote by Steve Martin. You probably heard it. He says, "Be so good they can't ignore you."
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm getting from this conversation here is equally, spend time developing the actual craft versus focusing on marketing your craft when it's perhaps not so good.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for me as well to see this, because I always say like, oh man, this guy did so well and back in the day, oh, this person built an audience, or oh, look at how they built this audience a few years ago. Oh, I should have done that. And then I think about it for a few minutes, and actually my wife is the one that brought this up, and I'm like, oh, I wish I'd done that so long ago. Oh, I should have thought of this years ago. Oh, I wish I'd done. And she goes, your show is so much better now than it was back then, that you're going to keep so many more of the listeners now than you would have back then. So it's actually good to see that. Like, yeah, it'd be great if you'd found this a couple years ago, but it's actually just as good / better now. They have more resources and a better product to broadcast to those same people. And it's very true, because I look at a lot of people who are really slamming it out of the park, selling like a get rich quick using such and such online secrets thing now. And I'm just thinking to myself, in 5 years, when we're looking at our careers and there's people going, oh, isn't that the guy that teaches you how to get rich online or some crap like that? Pass. You have to undo that branding, and it's going to take you a long time to undo that branding. And I know that because we had a pivot, from dating industry stuff to personal growth and being something that was designed for men to being something that's a little bit more neutral in terms of the ungendered or whatever, although we still have 80% men, of course, listening to The Art of Charm. And I know how hard it is to make that jump, but it's even harder to exist with one foot in one industry and one in the other. And I notice a lot of thought leaders and business people doing this same thing, where they're like, okay, what pays the bills is get rich quick with webinars or Facebook ads. But what I like talking about is inspiration and how great human potential is. You just can't credibly do both. So you have to figure out how to do one of those things really well. But the problem is, if you're blowing your horn all the time about how you're this big internet personality, you have to pay the bills somehow. But if you just focused on the one area that you really loved, that craft, and you got really good at that, you'd be 10 times further than you are in 5 years, because you're not hamstringing yourself with one foot in each of these buckets. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Confucius says, the rabbit, if you're chasing two rabbits, like you catch none, something like that. Like,
yeah,
when you focus on two different things, it's tough to catch one at all. Gary Keller has a great book, The One Thing, and the whole book is just focusing, focus on that one thing rather than trying to focus on many things. I think what happens there is we get caught in this sort of comparison trap where you're working really hard on something and you're spending money, you're spending time, you're spending your finite time on this thing, and you're not seeing the results that you would like. And you're seeing this other guy in a different industry killing it, or supposedly killing it. And it's easy to think, oh man, maybe my thing's not the right thing. And then we switch from one thing to the next, and we did not put in what Malcolm Gladwell states, like kind of the 10,000 hour rule. We're putting in like 500 hours into one thing, and then going into another thing, putting another 500 hours in it. And we're never really hitting that level of mastery. I think it's easy to get caught in that comparison trap. Even myself, like so many times I'm like, oh, knowledge for men, it's only focusing on men. But there's so many men. It's like, sometimes I think like, oh, I need a switch, or this guy's doing this. I need to talk about this. And it's like, you know what? Come back to why I started this. Come back to, the main message I'm trying to hit here, and stay grounded to that. But it is easy. It's tough, the comparison trap, especially with social media today. everywhere and easily accessible to anyone with an internet connection.
Well, and I think a lot of us, especially us guys, we feel the need to have everybody know about us and have our thing be externally validated, whatever it is. Oh, yeah, 10,000 people listen to each episode of this. I didn't look at the stats for The Art of Charm for about 5 or 6 years, really, because nobody looked at podcasts and nobody really cared about podcasts back in 2006 all the way through 2012 and 13 when you started. It was just not a popular thing. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to go pay attention to every little stat and every little da-da-da, because you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment. So I just focused on interviewing and getting better at that. And that was a much better use of time. But I get why people do this. They're looking at their stats, their traffic, and things like that so they can compare themselves, like you said, because of social media especially. But it becomes super unhealthy because you start doing short-term things to get a leg up so that you can go, well, look, we got even more for this. We got even more downloads for that. We got even more followers for this, instead of tracking what matters over time. So that's why you end up with all of these thought leaders that really aren't experts in anything and don't really do any particular thing well, except for try to follow trends and then switch to the next thing. So it's kind of like, well, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm an internet personality and I have a YouTube channel. Well, what do you do on that channel? And you look at it and it's like lame personal growth tip, book recommendation, comedy video, review of an electronic product. And you're just thinking, who the hell is watching this?
Review of an electronic product.
I mean, right? I mean, if you are vanilla, the audience in the world constantly kind of try to turn you into vanilla so that you can be everything to everyone. But the problem is, as soon as you become vanilla, they go, well, screw this. I'm looking for chocolate, man. Yeah. So you can become generally palatable to pretty much everybody, or you can focus on a certain niche and kill it. And that's not an excuse to do something crappy and you go, well, it's an acquired taste. I'm focusing on one niche. No, focus on something that serves a particular group of people. It doesn't have to be to the exclusion of another group, but you have to stop trying to be acceptable or palatable to a large swathe of people. It just doesn't work.
Is that why you think some people come and go in this industry? Like you've been in, you said 2006, that's as of now, about 11 years ago. You've seen a lot of people come and go. You've mentioned some of different people doing different things, but is that kind of why you feel some people are here and some people aren't here anymore and they've kind of automated and left it?
Sure. I mean, that's general human nature. Bear in mind, 2006 is when I started the Art of Trump podcast, but I started looking at dating psychology, persuasion, and influence in 2004.
Okay.
And so, I mean, even longer. I rarely think about it like that, but 2006 is kind of when we came out of the shell into this publicly, and frankly, we didn't even market it that well until 2009, 2010. So there's roots that were already there in the business that hadn't really been there before, and that's one of the reasons why our company and team is good at what they do, and why the Art of Trump podcast has a diverse fan base that's really interested in what we do. But I think, yeah, for sure, that's the reason that some people aren't there. But I think that some people leave industries because they're not leaving the industry because they have a great amount of success and they're looking for the next challenge, because people very rarely bury things that they love doing that are generating returns for them. They leave things that they can't stand anymore for various reasons. And it doesn't mean that something that's successful can't be something you also hate, but usually you sell it. You don't just ditch it, right? Or you don't just eject from it. And I think a lot of people do this because of the result of a lot of short-term thinking finally stacking up to bite them in the ass hard enough that they leave. So all of these guys that started off with pickup artisty stuff like we did way back in the day, and then said, well, I'm going to do infield videos because everybody wants that. Oh, I'm going to do easier when I'm going to do same night, sex, whatever. I don't even know what the trendy things were for back in the day. And then they're like, no, I'm going to move into self-actualization. Well, all right, but you just spent your entire career making all of these short-term moves and shock value and smack talking. Now you suddenly want a more mature, evolved audience. Well, that's going to take a long time. But when it does, and they go, screw this, I can't just get easy coattail riding like I have for the past few years, they just bounce. Mark Manson being the exception. Mark Manson started off in the pickup industry too, but then he went, screw this crap, moved to Brazil, read and wrote a lot, and developed a totally different brand, and then waited it out for 7 years or something.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've known him for that whole time. So for me, it was kind of cool to see, because I remember when he was posting on some of these dumb message boards like we were, how do I get my infield video up on YouTube? And then after a while, him and me and a few other folks just kind of went, this industry is full of weirdos that we don't want to be like and we don't want to be around. We need to step back and reinvent this whole thing. It just takes a really, really long time. Most people won't do that work. And so they just bounce, and now they're selling foreign currency trading how-tos or, penny stock bullshit. And I get it, because their goal was never to be a thought leader, to innovate in this industry, to teach, to have impact. Their goal is just to make money and do it as easily as they can. And that's fine. No judgments really directly here. I'm just saying that if people want to create impact and have purpose, you have to play the long game. You have to.
What I'm getting from what we've been discussing here, shift from short-term thinking to long-term thinking on your journey. And the short-term things can get you some cool wins, or can be some cool things that happen, but can tend to go away quickly too. But that long-term thinking, I feel like you're more grounded in the long-term thinking. You're more of like a rock, like you're like a mountain when you're thinking long term, versus short term being like this leaf in the wind that's being blown around based on what they hear one day or what the market is asking for in that particular season. Shift from short term thinking to long term thinking. With that, I want to touch on this, which is that we, especially our opening, the way we opened this episode here about fortune favors the prepared. And then I talked about Michael Phelps training 4 years straight, not missing one work day, just kind of work, grind, hustle. It can be overwhelming to someone to the point where they're losing balance in their life, or they're actually, the thing that they want is actually becoming this detriment. Popular influencers like Gary Vaynerchuk, whom I have interviewed, and I have read his books, and I like a lot of his messages, but I do find that there could be some challenge for someone who is hearing this message of, I'm not working hard enough. I need to be working 16, 18 hours a day. I need to be working on Christmas Day. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely work on Christmas Day. I like doing it. The reason I work is because I really love doing what I'm doing, and I to some extent I do agree. Look, you don't have to constantly be here's the distinction. You don't have to constantly be creating work for yourself, because hustle. Like, if you're doing what you need to do and it's done, then you can work on other skills and things like that. If you're obsessed, like I am, like Gary is, things like that, I will create another thing that I need to master because I know it will help 1% and give me a 1% edge. I have Saturday lessons with this broadcasting coach to show me things that he thinks I can change, and some of the feedback gets discarded and a lot of it gets taken on, and that's super important for me, but I don't necessarily need it to be successful even in the next 5 years. I think it's going to be something I build on for the next 5 to 10 years. And Gary's the same way, and what Gary's talking about in a lot of respects is /are people that say things like, there's not enough hours in the day. I've got kids and I've got a full-time job. And then he says his whole thing is like, what are you doing from 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. to 2 a.m.?
Yeah.
And the answer is they're fucking watching TV. I don't know if I can say it on your show, but that's what they're doing.
You're good.
And that's really important to note, because a lot of people, I think his point, what he might mean to say here, and what I certainly mean to say is, a lot of people, they feel like they don't have time because they're not looking at the minutia. Sure. But I think a lot of people don't really want what they think they want and what they say they want. And there's a lot of people who think they have to be an entrepreneur or they're somehow failing. I go to these conferences sometimes, and there are these kids and things that say, and I say a kid now is anyone in their 20s, by the way, because I'm 37. But kids who say things like, I'm working at this restaurant and I hate it, and I want to go all in and quit my job and focus on my business. And there's this raucous applause. And I'm like, don't quit your job. Don't quit your job to focus on your business, because right now your business doesn't need your full-time effort. And if you really get down to it with a lot of these guys and girls for that matter, right, they think, well, if I quit, what it does is it shows everyone how serious I am. And then I get some sort of applause for going all in, which is dumb, because not only have you quit your safety net, which is the thing that pays for the bills, that you have, Now you have to make short-term plays. There's a lot of wisdom out there that says, burn the ships, cross the Rubicon. I understand that in some way, but really you don't want to force yourself to make short-term plays. And you will if you're going to get evicted from your place unless you make money this month.
Right.
But if you're making money by being a server this month, you can focus on building a brand and creating a better product so that when you launch in 4 months, you've got something much more distilled. And that's better for you long term. And again, these short-term plays often come from places of ego. Well, I've got to quit my job because then I'm serious and then I'm an entrepreneur and I don't have to say I'm a waiter and I run a business. I can just say I'm an entrepreneur. Who gives a crap? Who gives a shit? You're trying to do that because what? Other people will like you better, think you're cool. You'll have a little bet of a merit badge in the next conference that you go to because you're working full time. It doesn't make any sense. And so when Gary's saying things like hustle and, et cetera, and go all in, he's not necessarily saying quit your job. And he's certainly not saying put yourself in a position where you have to make short-term plays. Always create a scenario in which you can create long-term plays. That's going to be my wisdom bit here. Always create a scenario in which you are able to make long-term plays. Even if that means, oh, crap, my business is a little slow. Maybe I should go back to my day job at Chipotle. Fine. It is not a defeat. It is a strategy to mitigate damage, because if you're creating a company that sells a product or you're marketing something or you're writing, if you're enabling yourself to do that and you're enabling yourself to do that in a way that doesn't make it so that you have undue stress and you've got to create wins this month that are going to sacrifice the ability to make wins in the long term, then it's a win to go back and be a barista. It's a win to go back and work at a restaurant. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because they see it as some sort of defeat. But anything that preserves your ability to make long-term decisions that are better for you, better for your company, better for your brand, better for your family, whatever, is a win, even if it looks like you're shoveling shit for the next couple of months or years.
Yeah. So I'm getting patience. It's like, I think a part of quitting the job is closely related to instant gratification of, if I quit my job, then I have to, my back is against the wall and I have to succeed because I have no other way of paying my bills now. And it seems like it's going to speed up the process. Like if I quit my job, it's going to happen sooner. But what I'm hearing is that it may not happen sooner because it's going to force you into a position of short-term plays. And your main message here that I'm getting is you want to put yourself in a position where you can play the long game.
Yeah, it's not just that people want instant gratification. That's for sure true. But you're right. It has to be long-term because, look, maybe if you're one of those cases where I'm just not making a move to really sit down and write my book or whatever because of fear. Okay, great. Create a bigger fear in that, oh no, I've got to create this book or I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. But that's a bad idea to do it in the way that you quit your job. It's better to put out to the world, I'm going to have my book done by this point or XYZ. That's more embarrassing, right? Or someone holding you accountable. It's bad to have something that then is outside of your control. And I think a lot of people, they think if I quit my day job and I focus on my business, it's going to, like you said, it's going to happen faster. So much of that is outside your control that it doesn't make sense to do that to yourself. Because it would be one thing if it was just this thing's inside your control, you're procrastinating and you're using work to do so, fine. But usually that's not the case. Usually the case is everything's going along just fine. You're making the steps you need to make. You're learning what you need to learn. It's a slow process and you wish it were faster. So you think, okay, I'm going to create this artificial time constraint by quitting my job and being broke. That doesn't mean that your book's going to get published faster. That doesn't mean that book agents are going to find your pitches more persuasive. That doesn't mean investors are going to think the app that you've coded is better or that they're more persuasive. None of those things make any difference. The fact that you're unemployed doesn't make any difference to those people. In fact, if anything else, it makes you more desperate, and it means you're going to have to take shortcuts in the product in order to get it to market faster because you screwed up and you cut your own wang off by creating a super short timeline. And that's not good. And I think that's just a trend that's running rampant in young guys today, whether it has to do with jobs, creative pursuits, businesses, everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I interviewed a guy named Bo Eason who played for the Niners. He played for a lot of other teams too. His whole main message was play the long game, and that you can do and achieve almost anything that you want if you're willing to dedicate 15 to 20 years to it.
Sure.
That's what he said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you can play that game and that's where you're playing, like, you can get it. Like, you can become that. But it's not going to happen in 3 years. And it's worked for him. And he gave a story about how that was his dream. He wanted to be a professional football player. He did it. And it took about 15, 20 years. He wanted to have like a huge Broadway show in New York. And it took him about 15 years to do it. And he got that advice from Al Pacino in a conversation that he had. And I think that patience is, I just want to say, like a virtue. Like it's how do you enjoy? It's like finding peace and happiness in the journey itself rather than this final destination. I think like that's the hack, is being able to enjoy the moments, to enjoy that journey rather than postponing your happiness until the future when supposedly you're going to achieve this thing.
Sure. And some of that, I guess, for sure true. But I think the hack or the takeaway from that also is maybe you can't actually accomplish anything in 10 or 20 years to dedicating it to the process in a casual way. But I think, look, I know a lot of people that have dedicated X number of years to something, but there are varying levels of intensity. And this sort of dovetails with what we were saying before, where, look, if you're in the NFL or you want to be a famous person or something like that, you literally have to have almost nothing getting in the way. Every social engagement that you go to has to be hanging out with other people who want to do certain things, certain sports, certain activities, certain things like that. Look at these chess masters. They're spending 12 plus hours a day playing chess, memorizing chess, studying chess. Some of those guys are the greatest in the world at what they do, namely chess. But when you look at their interviews from them, they have no life other than that. And that's, you have to be comfortable with that. And I don't think people are really ready for that. Same thing goes for me with Art of Charm. You know, we've been in business for over 10 years, but we haven't been doing the same amount of intensity that I have right now with the business. It took a long time to ramp up and make sense out of that. And I think that's important to note, because people think they can hack the intensity process by doing what we just talked about before, quitting your job or something. And they're
Right.
like, I am now more intense. No, you just have fewer resources and more time, perhaps, but you have many fewer resources and a lot more stress. That doesn't necessarily equal intensity. You have to ramp up to that and know what to focus on instead of just going, all right, I'm going to slam the accelerator down to the floor and, you know, hope that the engine is going to hold up. That's not how this is supposed to work, and it's not how it's going to work. And so, yes, I agree. You can probably do pretty much anything if you have 10 to 20 years to spend on it, but you probably can't do anything else. Depending on the activity, you may not be able to do anything else.
So
in the meantime,
are people, and I almost want to say just like all of us, I think the question then that comes first is like, you got to ask, like, are you willing to also sacrifice these? Because that conversation isn't always being had. Like, are you willing to sacrifice these other things though? Like, you can do it in 10 to 20 years, and that's like, oh, I can. But then there's like this but conversation of, hey, you got to sacrifice some of these things too. And I think that might be where there's the disconnect.
Yeah, of course. The problem is you can't really answer that question. Most people can't answer that question until they're in the moment. So a lot of young folks, myself included, would be like, I'm willing to sacrifice anything to make this business work. And it's like, cool. And then you get married and you're like, well, I'm not gonna ruin my relationship with my wife. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I'm willing to sacrifice anything, but, you know, I still got to relax and take care of myself.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, yeah, but I got kids now. And, and you hear that and you go, well, yeah, that's what people are talking about. And they're like, well, those things are not optional. I was just talking about sacrifice other types of careers or other hobbies or other. No. The people I know that, for example, are celebrities, they have no family. They have very few friends, real friends. They work all the time. They're lonely as hell, but they are famous. That's what they wanted, you know, or other people that are like, you know, I've got this business and I'm making a crap load of money. Cool. But you're divorced. Your kids aren't close to you. Your family's not that close to you. You don't do much. You're on a flight right now. It's Memorial Day. What are you doing? Oh, flying back from a talk I gave at XYZ. Cool, man. You're every brunch, every meal you have, every lunch you have, you're with someone else to try to foster the relationship. I mean, it's always stuff like that. Those are the sacrifices people are talking about. It's a level of intensity that you just can't sustain unless you are singularly focused. And that's not true for every industry or every business, but it is true for a lot of these people who think they're going to be the next Gary Vaynerchuk or whatever. They're just not ready. They think they're ready. They pay lip service to being ready. They are absolutely not ready.
Yeah. Do you know, because anytime I find someone who has this, I like got to meet them, or I'm very excited about having them on the show, but someone who's just got it dialed in their health, it's dialed, their career dialed, relationships dialed, because that to me is like it's almost like a leprechaun, like someone who's really got all these different aspects of their life dialed in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of folks that do that, and the way they do that is they kind of overlap. They have a particular overlap. So, like, I think of my friend Ben Greenfield, for example.
Okay,
he's this really good fitness. You know who he is, right? Ben Greenfield.
He's been on. Yeah.
So he's married and he has kids, and he's got married really young, which is great for him. And he's had kids younger, which is awesome because he's like this young dude who's got young kids, and he's got a health business. So his athletics pay for some of that, and he's also got the business stuff going. That's great. It's a really good balance. But the problem is if not a problem for him. The problem is for most of us, we don't do that, right? We don't have a health-based business, or we don't have time has already passed for us. So now we're trying to figure out how to go date while also working with XYZ particular business or trying to scale what we have now. And the same thing is, honestly, it would be true for him. If he wants to scale what he's doing and add a zero to the amount of revenue he's got every year, and I don't think he would do this. I don't think he needs to. He would have to give up some of whatever he's got going now. So the people I know that have a great balance, they work in the areas that overlap, and they also decide to get satisfied with what they have. There's certainly nobody that I know personally, and I know that some of these people have the public image of being this way, but there's certainly nobody that I know personally who is, has $100 million or more in their business, and also has a great balanced family life, and also is well adjusted socially and has close friendships, and also doesn't work all the time, right? I don't know any single person like that. I know plenty of people who manage an image that looks like that, but once you get to know them, you're just like, oh, holy crap. I mean, there are people, no names mentioned, that write books about outsourcing everything and making sure that you're staying in this way and being all healthy and all this stuff. And they work all the time. They're not doing this tiny, everything is batch and I got people for this and this person's screening that. Bull crap. They're working constantly. They're traveling constantly. They're monitoring things. They've got emotional and mental health issues they're dealing with. They don't have a significant other or kids. Every time you zoom in and you put these people under a microscope, myself included, that balance is screwed up, man. All out of whack. And people are going to not like this. They're going to be like, well, just because you got it. This is where you're going to get the feedback from people that are like, this guy, he doesn't know anybody, everybody. Look, my whole job the past 10 years has been studying people, especially high performers. I don't know anybody that's got a super amazing balance in any given particular field and that is able to ratchet up one area without causing any issues in any of the others. The reason I gave the Ben Greenfield example is because he's got a really good balance going now. But if you start to talk, when we talk personally, there's stuff going on that he's trying to fix or wondering how he's going to scale one area without giving up or sacrificing in another. And the answer is, I don't think you can.
Do you think that if you do find balance, that it's even worthwhile? Like it would. I kind of think of balance like where it could be. Well, first, everyone's term of balance could be different. It doesn't necessarily mean 25%, in health, 25% in career, 25% relationships, 25% in growth. Like someone's balance, I think they get to create what they feel it would make them happy in a quote unquote balanced life. But if someone did reach some sort of state of balance, it might not be what it seems to be.
Everybody I know who has a great balance, that's a generalization I probably shouldn't go to. A lot of the examples I'm coming up with, I'm not still talking about Ben Greenfield. I don't want him to get mad at me. I just hung out with him. He's a great guy. But a lot of the people that I'm coming up with in my head who have like great balances, they're always searching for some other area that they want to improve.
Right.
Or they're so freaking dissatisfied with their life that they're unhappy in each of those areas. Just because you have a balance doesn't mean you've achieved the pinnacle in each of those areas, right?
Right.
So there's plenty of people I know that have a great family, great relationships, great friends, and they've got a great business, but they're always upset that they didn't do more with their business, or they're upset that they screwed up some of their past relationships, or they're working on this other area because they're not excelling and they're not the number one in this other spot. It's always hard. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people that have balance in a particular area, but they're usually not exceeding and crushing it in any particular area. And that's sort of part of the syndrome of being somebody who is always aspiring to more. You can have balance, but if I had family life balance, work life balance, whatever, and I didn't want to work all the time and improve, I would probably be constantly dissatisfied with the quality of the work that I'm putting out. The reason I'm not dissatisfied with the quality of the work I'm putting out is because I work too freaking much. And that's true for most people that I know that are really great at anything. They do that thing to the detriment of other things, and they're okay with that, but it doesn't mean they're in balance.
Yeah, I think that goes to, with everyone's definition of balance, I think I think you get to create it and do what works for you. I don't think there's this universal percentage of how you should spend your life. I think you kind of define what it is how you want to live your life, and you go live it. And I find that is a much better way for myself to live.
Yeah, well, you can't live by other people's measuring sticks, that's for damn sure.
So you might be wondering, why would I ever invest in a coach? I've never done anything like that before. Well, it's going to shorten your learning curve and save you the time that it would take to achieve your goal. You can avoid making mistakes that you would otherwise make. You'll get more results because everything will be tailored to your specific needs and challenges. The coach will hold you accountable so you can't procrastinate, so you can't be lazy, so you can't say, I didn't have the time. You'll be challenged and pushed harder than you've ever been pushed. You'll have conversations so powerful that you'll feel more energized, alive, and confident and certain about the goals that you have in front of you and where you want to go. Most importantly, where you want to be. You'll go farther than you've ever gone before when you have a coach. If you want to learn more about our high performance men's coaching program, go to kfmcoach.com. Again, that's kfmcoach.com to learn more about our high performance men's coaching program. You have got to understand that every successful person in the world invests in coaching to go from good to great. And if you're already a high achiever, then how much more could you achieve if you had a high performance men's coach at your side to push you even further? Go to kfmcoach.com to learn more and apply for our high performance men's coaching program. Again, that's kfmcoach.com. Absolutely. And so, coming to conclusion here, I want to kind of bring some of these things together here. It's been a powerful episode of really helping guys focus on the long game, having patience, not really sticking to those short-term things, but really aiming for the long plays, playing the long game in their careers. We talked about 15, 20 years and that being really important and kind of understanding that and then having a level of intensity within those 15 to 20 years. But what are some other things here that may allow someone to reach that specific goal? I'm thinking things like the value of having mentors. I'm hearing you constantly say things like, oh, I'm doing this coaching, I'm working with this person, people who are masters in their craft who are helping you accelerate your, skill set with broadcasting. Mentors, I'm interested. I want to know, are you part of any mastermind groups that have helped you personally and professionally? What are some other things that guys could be doing so that they could increase that level of intensity so that they can actually achieve what they want to achieve in 15 years?
I'm actually not in mastermind groups. I
Why is
do.
that?
I think most of the time they're a waste of time. And I think that a lot of them are the blind leading the blind. So you'll end up in a group of folks who are trying to share things that worked for them or maybe they read about somewhere, but aren't necessarily going to work for you. I just found that most of the time it's not useful. So I do hang out with other entrepreneurs and I hang out with other guys a lot. And we talk about things like that, but I don't know. Maybe mastermind is what that is, but I would say I certainly don't pay for a membership to a group to do that. That has not been useful for me in the past. So I stay away from that type of thing. But I do agree that you should definitely make relationships with people, share things with those same people, and all the better if those people have similar niches, fields, interests, things like that where you can share. If you're running a business, you definitely need to be in some sort of group, loosely affiliated or formal, of other entrepreneurs, or you'll go crazy.
Yeah.
And I think for men, it's especially important because we don't have a lot of outlet for topics. It's really hard to tell your friends, hey, a classic example, hey, I'm feeling really out of balance. I've been focusing a lot on work lately, and I feel like I'm neglecting my wife and kids. A lot of your friends are just going to go like, bummer, bro, have a beer. And you're like, it's not helpful. Right. Yeah. So I feel like you should be in some sort of group for that. If that's a mastermind, then cool. I guess what I'm thinking of when you say masterminds are like, join my online course where you can sit in a Facebook group and chat about Facebook ads. And I'm like, no, it's a bullshit thing.
No, like an in-person mastermind where people, they're qualified people. People have to be vetted in and coming together. And there's a specific, there's a goal, there's an agenda for the conversation that,
and rules towards, and things like that. Right. Yeah, almost like a support group in a way, but you focus maybe also on some business stuff and there's some coaching element. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do stay away from a lot of them because of the fact that I think a lot of them are just designed for people to make dough now, and they're led by people who are not creating that much, and their big product is the mastermind. I disagree with that. I think a lot of the groups that I'm a part of, the people that are in them, is not necessarily led by somebody who's like a life coach. It's led by all of us, and we've all got something that we've created, and we might have a facilitator, but that person works for/with us, not above us. And that's important because a lot of times I think it's easy enough now to be like some sort of internet marketer and say like, I've got a mastermind with entrepreneurs. And it's like, okay, what are you going to teach us? Well, okay, your entire business is what? Us coming to your house? I don't know if I like that business model, of me paying you for me to go to your house. So I say yes, masterminds, but be very careful about who's leading them, what the value proposition is, and whether or not you're just paying to hang out with other people facilitated by somebody else who's not necessarily qualified to take a good look at what you're doing and how to improve.
Yeah, interesting points. I think very well taken. I have a friend who's a part of a mastermind group, and he said a Navy SEAL recently joined. And he said one of the reasons why he loved this mastermind group in particular was because as a Navy SEAL, just one Navy SEAL, like on his own, he's a badass soldier. But what makes the Navy SEALs is being on a team. And he said he felt that like when he built his, after the SEALs, he went and built his own business, that he felt alone, that like not just he has a team of people working for him, but as an owner of a company, there's just certain things you just want to talk to other owners who can really relate and connect with some of those similar challenges. And he said when he joined the mastermind, he felt like he was a part of like an elite team again, and it helped him really share things that had been on his chest for a long time. And I thought that was a lot. A Navy SEAL, you think of them as these elite warriors, and they are, but what makes them so elite in many cases is the fact that it's many elite warriors coming together, united. And I feel like, there's a lot of weight in that.
Sure. I can understand that for sure. And I think it is important for men, especially to have bonds in a group. I don't necessarily know if it has to be something that's also about your business and about your personal life and et cetera. All the better if it can be. But I always try to be careful with this and tell people to be careful with this as well, because it should be run by the group and not run by necessarily some sort of for-profit organization, because the agendas can be misaligned.
This Awesome. I've gotten so much value from this. And I mean, you've been in this industry for such a long time. And so for you to dish out a lot of these like just playing that long game, hammering that home. And I think there's a lot of guys who feel that they have to quit their job in order to succeed, and really debunking that whole myth, and that, man, you having a job might actually be the thing that you need to give you cash flow so that you can live and make long-term plays. Cash flow enables you to make long-term plays. Lack of cash flow probably forces you down that hole of, doing those short plays that may be a detriment to your brand. Really powerful insights here, Jordan. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here back on the show. Guys, for the listeners here, I think you've heard a ton of value from Jordan, but definitely head on over to the Art of Charm website and check, or the Art of Charm podcast too. Listen to more of Jordan's amazing episodes that he's done for the last over a decade here, and definitely check out the website. He offers incredible programs and services. I've actually been through some of his programs, and Jordan's doing great work, guys. Go ahead and check out his stuff. Jordan, any last final thoughts, pieces of wisdom here for the audience?
No, man, I just appreciate the opportunity. Can I just tell you, I'm going to tell you in front of your audience now, and you can edit it out if you want. You are a much better interviewer than you were last time. That should go without saying, but I'll tell you, I've done other shows where I'm like, I haven't been on here in 3 years. Oh, it's exactly the same. So you've clearly been working on this skill, son. I assume, whether deliberately on purpose, whatever, or just straight up repetition and practice, you have definitely gotten better.
That's awesome. And what's great, man, is I said there's 3 guys who've been on this show 3 times. It's you, Mark Manson, and Michael Matthews. And when they hit that 3rd time, they all said the same thing at the end. And it means a lot, man, because I still have, sometimes I stutter. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to go, but man, it's been a tough journey and one that I've thought about leaving many times because of the love, comments and feedback and 1-star reviews. And, I'm also we put it on YouTube, so we get a lot of comments there, not so much on the podcast. But
the YouTube comments are the worst.
YouTube people are just, where do they come from?
God.
Yeah. But toxic. I really appreciate that, Jordan. That means a lot to me because this has been something I've been working on for the last almost 3.5 years now.
Yeah, you got it, man. Look, the iTunes reviews, they still sting, right? When you get a bad one, I try to look at the ones and think like, okay, this person just said, this guy's so sexist and awful. And I'm like, okay, there's 25,000 women listening. If I were really sexist, I would have heard about it, okay? At least 25, maybe 35,000 women listening to each episode of the show. As for some of the YouTube stuff, though, is just, if you can have a team member look at that, you just got to do that. Because I will tell you, YouTube is I'm trying to think of something that's worse than YouTube, and even Twitter, which has a lot of just toxic crap on it. YouTube's still worse somehow.
I bet you though, these people are like the nicest people in real life. But like on YouTube, they put on their hats and they're just like, go to war with your channel, man.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of I don't get that much bad stuff on there. A lot of it's just spam, but some top YouTube comments you get are things like, this guy needs to shut the hell up. I want to hear the guest. And it's like, well, I used to be like, oh no, I should take this to heart. But you can click around if you really want to waste your time, and you can look at some of the comments they leave on other channels, and you find out, okay, this is like a 16-year-old kid who's never done anything, ever built anything, has, the half of the stuff he's commenting on are like videos and how to make money selling cologne on eBay. It's just like these aren't people that are high caliber enough to listen to. They're firing stuff off on their phone on the way to soccer practice, so it can be tough though, because it can be really tough to kind of look at a comment and think like, okay, what part of this, that's a whole other art. What part of this is something I can learn from, and what part of this is this person venting because they don't like their life, right? And everything in between.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, Jordan, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show. For all those listening here, go to Art of Charm. Go to Google, type in Art of Charm. You can also Google Jordan Harbinger. All his stuff shows up. He's been on freaking every major media platform there is. I highly recommend his work, his program, and he's also got a great team with AJ and Johnny Zubak. It's Zubak, right?
That's right.
Yeah. He's got a great team. It's not just, Jordan does so much, amazing work, but he's got a great team behind him that's also putting out great content as well. So check out the team and all their great work. All right. It's been a pleasure having you here on the show, Jordan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.